Hello again, I'm Quinn, and these are not bonsai. It is my little jade jungle. And this one here is kind of the very first plant I ever got with the intention of using some bonsai techniques on it. And it just turns out that these are pretty much the perfect plant to do that on, or this guy. I should point out while I'm saying that this is a jade, and this is a Licari Afra, I believe is how you say it. They're very similar in how you care for them, though I have noticed the portulacaras do seem to like about twice as much water, which still isn't very much, because these things can go a very long time without water. And that's for a bunch of reasons. One of the easiest ones to consider is basically this is a succulent. And I like it a lot because it's a succulent that can get a very convincing tree form. Like this one here kind of has. He's definitely out of proportion a bit, and I do intend to do some chopping on him one day. I haven't yet, just because it is by far my oldest, kind of largest plant of any sort, especially considering it's a jade, a variegated one at that. I've just never seen one this big, and I just love kind of what's happened on the trunk here. It's got a really nice tan, barkish looking color, and it's got these weird knobs on it, which I haven't really been able to figure out, but I like them. We won't be working on him today. I'm just kind of doing a little show and tell. What we will be doing, possibly in part 2 of this video, will be repotting this stump you probably can't even really see over here. I also found this on Craigslist, kind of an entirely different scenario. This lady was giving it away for free. It was in a terracotta pot in just the most compact soil I've ever encountered, which it's still in at the moment, because I was very early into my kind of plant collecting, so I wasn't very confident to take all that dirt away and expose the roots. So all I did was take it out of its old pot, which had actually been in there so long it had cracked the pot, and when I was taking it out I found pieces of another terracotta pot I think it had busted out of previous to that. So he's been root bound his whole life. I have no idea what his roots are going to look like, but I think it is time we repotted him. I've done a ton of chopping to him. He used to be much taller and skinnier and just really weak, and you might be able to see here I do have 2 good little leaders coming out here with a lot of leaves that I have let dry up really bad. And I'll give you a close-up of that later. You can see they just wrinkle up, and I've rehydrated him. Hopefully he perks back up here real soon, and that's why it'll be a second video. I gotta wait for him to get his fill, dry out, because you do want the soil on these jades, Licari Afras, I do it for any of my succulents, to be very dry when you repot them. And then you make sure not to water them after you've repotted them for a minimum of 7 to 10 days. I'll wait until either they start looking dry or they've got new growth. And then you know the roots are pretty well healed at that point. A lot of these will take very well to misting. So if you have repotted them recently, you can avoid watering the roots, but you can mist the leaves and they will absorb that moisture that way. So that's a great thing to do. And then, before we do that, I just kind of want to get a good look at each of these kind of individually. And I'll talk a little bit about them, and it'll give me the chance to get good videos on all these guys, because some of these are very slow growers. So it's really hard for me to see if they're even growing. And that kind of helps me decide how much to water them, if they need more light, kind of what their scenarios are. But if they just appear to be dormant like this guy has, though I know he's not, I do see new growth happening, but it's just at such a slow pace. I wonder if I'm underwatering, which is probably pretty likely, because like I'll show you here, you can see I can underwater even the most hardy of plants. So let me do a little rearranging here, and we'll take a closer look at each one of these guys. Alright, first we have here, like I said, my largest and oldest plant. I got this on Craigslist from a lady who told me at the time it was 15 years old. Now, I don't know if that was, from a leaf or from a rather large cutting. I myself have had it for about 2 years. And I think she got rid of it at the time because she had let it get real dry and it had been burned. It was pretty well defoliated. And she said it was just getting a bit large for her space. So I got this for $15. I was very excited about this deal. And all I've done is originally, I just grew it for about the first year, trying to let it kind of fill in a little. And then last springish, late spring, I repotted it. And I just pulled it out. I didn't do any root work, and I just put it in my version of soil. And I've been watering it, attempting to just let it grow. And honestly, I've just been afraid to chop it. I know these things do very well with pruning of any sort. Like, let's see. Right down here, I doubt I could get in there and get a close-up of it, but I actually chopped off a huge own little tree, really. And I tried to grow that as a cutting. It didn't work out. But you can see the stump is growing little leaves again. So these things are nearly indestructible. You can not water them. You can chop them. About the only way you're going to get one of these to go away for you is to let its roots sit in water. I found they can even, they don't mind getting a good amount of water, but it does have to be a rather rapid, wet, dry cycle. As long as those roots dry out pretty quick, they can get wet. Over the summer, I was watering them every day, every other day, maybe at least a little bit, and they didn't seem to mind so long as they've dried out. I don't believe I've killed any jades yet. I did kill one of my very first portulacaria afras I pruned it really hard, and then at some point I gave it too much water. So that's the key here. Just too much water. You almost can't go wrong not watering these. Like you'll see in a moment, their leaves do begin to wrinkle. So it's incredibly easy to know when they need some water. So let me give you a little spin here of this guy. And once I get up the courage, we're going to chop him real hard. Have a lot of cool cuttings, and maybe get a pretty neat tree out of this one day. And these are some of what was just labeled Tricolor Jade. So you'll see their trunks or stems here can get a very nice red color. And their leaves will get a little red tinge as well, but I've noticed it's mostly in the trunk where you get the coloration until that bark starts kind of forming. But these again are also kind of slow growers for me, which is somewhat confusing because the little, I believe this is like a mini jade, has a much smaller leaf size, seems like, than my other one. But he seems to grow pretty rapidly compared to these. So, just something else I'm kind of learning as I go, that seems like some of the jades of variety, some of the varieties of jade, just grow quite a bit slower than some of the other ones. Even though these appear to be just like my first jade in everything but coloration. can see down there, a little echeveria leaf that I'm not even positive I put in there, but we'll let him stay because that's kind of neat. And I'm a really big fan of these jades because of their root system. They don't need much root at all to get quite large. I've found the diameter around the trunk where the root exists is rather small. That's why you'll notice a lot of my anchor rocks, some of them rather large for such a small tree. But that's because those roots are just not significant enough at the moment until they've really filled in to support the tree. But because of that, I can keep them in rather small pots for a long, long time, which I'm a big fan of, given my limited space, and I just like small pots. These here are my portulacaria afras. I actually got these the same day, I believe, as that very first jade. So this would be one of my very first little experiments into bonsai. And I think it's going rather well. You can see here I'd done a lot of trimming. Pretty much chopped every branch I could, because that's kind of how you start bonsai. You buy a tree and you over chop the heck out of the poor little guy. But thankfully, being a portulacaria afra, he took that all in stride and has continued to just grow for me. So you can see, kind of going out of frame here, I'm growing a leader, and I'm hoping that'll continue to get stronger and thicker as we go. And I think I'll just keep trying to create these levels of pads, but I haven't really thought about the future of this guy too much, as I do for most of my plants. I'm just enjoying that I'm growing them at the moment. I'm in no rush to see them 10, 20 years down the road. I'm just enjoying the fact that I cut him, he lived, he's making little pads for me, he's ramifying. So I'm having a good time with this one. And then I have his variegated friends over here, which, like you just saw my other variegated plant I'd mentioned, they just, in general, from my experience, seem to grow a little slower than their green counterparts. And this is what can be kind of confusing when you go looking for information about plants. I have definitely read that variegated things need less sunlight because of less green to absorb the energy. And I have conversely heard that variegated things need more sunlight because of the less green to directly absorb the energy. And due to their slow growing nature, from my experience, I would tend to think they need more sun. But I'm still going to just have to kind of keep observing before I can really come to a conclusion myself on that. But either way, they still seem to be growing rather happily. These are all cuttings I took from this one, which I probably shouldn't have done, because like I said, I chopped early and often, but we're slowing down now. So these are great, and they also get a real nice tree form. So I'm having a lot of fun with these so far. And here we have kind of my last little stragglers. This one has many names. I'd say Gollum Jade, Lord of the Rings, E.T. Fingers. Doesn't really matter. It's pretty easy to identify. It's quite a bit different than the other ones. It's grown really well for me. I'm liking its kind of shape here. It's getting a little thicker as it goes. And he's very, very dry. You can see his fingers are all shriveled up. But I did just give him water, so I'm sure he'll be fine. Nothing's fallen off yet. That's when you know it's in desperate need of water, is when these bottom ones, let's see if he'll come off, no, fall off, then definitely time to water. You can see the lean on my very first jade plant here. One of my grow lights got knocked over by my wee person and gave it a little shove, so I hope he's okay, but I'm sure he is. Like I'd mentioned earlier, these things are rather indestructible. And that one I pruned very hard in the beginning, and he's ramified nicely, and I'm going to let him just grow for a little while now to thicken up. As you can see, he's in a real small pot, and definitely hasn't filled that up with roots yet. And then here's just, because I couldn't get rid of cuttings, there's some succulent things in here, multiple of my variegated cuttings, a little cactus. You'll see come spring I have a cactus forest, so I have about 100 of these little guys. So they end up in my pots everywhere, little desert scenes, if you will. So that, I think, covers all my jades and portulacaria afras. And I definitely think we'll be back in part 2 to check out that stump's roots and see if we can't get him on the path to recovery fully. Well, thanks again for joining me here on NotBonsai.